The manila folder felt heavier than it should have as Dr. Sarah Chen placed it on her grandmother's old writing desk. 3 months had passed since Grandma May's funeral, and Sarah had finally found the courage to go through the boxes of documents and photographs that her family had stored in the garage. What she discovered would challenge everything she thought she knew about her grandmother's stories and about humanity's place in the universe. Sarah had grown up listening to her grandmother's tales of strange lights in the sky during the 1940s in rural Taiwan. As a child, she'd been mesmerized by Grandma May's vivid descriptions of a massive silver ship that would appear over the rice paddies on clear nights, silent as a ghost but brilliant as a second moon. The family had always treated these stories with gentle indulgence, assuming they were either folklore passed down through generations or the imaginative embellishments of a woman who had lived through extraordinary times. But the documents in the folder told a different story entirely. The first item was a letter, dated September 15, 1947, written in her grandmother's careful Chinese characters and addressed to the Taiwanese colonial government. Sarah's Mandarin was rusty, but she could make out enough to understand that Grandma May was reporting unusual aerial phenomena and requesting an official investigation. The letter was clinical, precise, and utterly devoid of the mystical storytelling flourishes that had characterized her bedtime tales. Beneath the letter were photographs, dozens of them, developed on the cheap film stock available in post-war Taiwan. The images were grainy and poorly lit, but unmistakable in their content. A large, disc-shaped object hovered in various positions above what Sarah recognized as her great-grandfather's farm. In some photos, the object appeared to emit beams of light downward. In others, it seemed to be scanning the landscape with methodical precision. Sarah's hands trembled as she examined each photograph. Her grandmother had been 15 years old when these were taken. A 15-year-old girl with access to a camera, already unusual for rural Taiwan in the 1940s, who had documented what appeared to be first contact with an extraterrestrial intelligence. The third document in the folder was a journal, written in a mixture of Chinese characters and broken English. Sarah realized with a start that her grandmother had been teaching herself English during this period, probably to better communicate with the American forces stationed in the region. The entries began in September 1947 and continued through the spring of 1948. September 20, 1947, the ship came again last night. This time it stayed for nearly an hour. I was able to get closer than before. It made no sound, but I could feel something like a warm vibration in my chest when I was near it. The rice plants directly beneath it appeared to grow faster than the surrounding crop. Ba thinks I am imagining things, but I show him the photographs tomorrow. September 25, 1947, Ba looked at the pictures. He is scared now. He wants to burn them and forbid me from going to the fields after dark. I told him we cannot ignore this. If these beings wanted to hurt us, they would have done so already. Instead, they seem to be studying, learning. I wish I could communicate with them. October 3, 1947, contact. I cannot believe I am writing these words, but it happened. The ship landed tonight in the eastern field, and a doorway opened. A figure emerged, tall, thin, but unmistakably intelligent. It did not speak with words, but somehow I understood its intentions. It wanted to learn about our agriculture, our society, our technology. In return, it showed me images in my mind of other worlds, other peoples, other ways of living. Sarah set the journal down and walked to the window, trying to process what she was reading. Her grandmother, the woman who had made the best dumplings in 3 counties and who had never learned to drive a car, had claimed to have made contact with an alien intelligence when she was 15 years old. The rational part of Sarah's mind, the part that had earned her a PhD in anthropology from Stanford, wanted to dismiss this as elaborate fiction. But the documentation was too detailed, too consistent, and too technically accurate for the time period. Moreover, her grandmother had never been prone to fantasy. She had been a practical woman, a survivor who had lived through the Japanese occupation, the Chinese Civil War, and the early days of Taiwan's transformation into a modern democracy. Sarah returned to the journal and continued reading. October 15, 1947, the being I have come to think of as teacher has visited 7 times now. Each encounter lasts longer than the previous one. Today, Teacher showed me how to improve our crop yields using a specific arrangement of plantings and a method of soil treatment that involves minerals I have never heard of. I tried to explain to Ba, but he thinks the ship is bringing evil spirits. He does not understand that, teacher, and its people are trying to help us. November 2nd, 1947, teacher has begun showing me images of Earth from space. It is more beautiful than I could have imagined, a blue marble suspended in endless darkness. But teacher also shows me troubling visions, great wars to come, environmental destruction, the possibility that humanity might not survive its own technological advancement. Teacher's people have been watching Earth for centuries, waiting to see if we will mature as a species or destroy ourselves. November 18, 1947, today teacher revealed the truth about why they chose our farm for contact. It was not random. Our family has a genetic marker that makes us more receptive to their form of mental communication. There are perhaps a few thousand humans worldwide who share this trait. Teacher's people have been slowly making contact with these individuals, preparing for the day when humanity might be ready for broader contact. December 1, 1947, teacher brought me aboard the ship today. I cannot adequately describe the experience with words that exist in any human language. The interior was vast, much larger than the exterior dimensions should have allowed. I saw star charts showing the locations of hundreds of civilizations throughout our galaxy. Earth was marked with a special symbol that teacher explained means developing species under observation. I learned that teacher's people call themselves the Kalendi, and they serve as a kind of galactic peacekeeping force, monitoring younger civilizations and offering guidance when appropriate. December 20, 1947, teacher explained that formal contact between humanity and the Kalendi will not happen for many decades, perhaps not until the 21st century. Humanity must first learn to overcome its tendency toward tribal warfare and environmental destruction. The Kalendi have seen too many promising species destroy themselves just as they reach the threshold of interstellar travel. But they are hopeful about humanity's potential. Our creativity, our emotional range, our capacity for both cooperation and competition make us unique among the developing species they monitor. January 15, 1948, teacher gave me a gift today, a small device that appears to be made of the same material as their ship. It is warm to the touch and seems to pulse with its own internal light. Teacher said it would allow me to communicate with them across great distances, and that I should use it only if humanity faces an existential crisis that requires their intervention. I have hidden it where no one else will find it. February 10, 1948, the visits are becoming less frequent. Teacher explained that their mission in this region is nearly complete. They have made contact with 12 individuals across East Asia, each chosen for their genetic compatibility and their potential to preserve the knowledge of this contact for future generations. We are to serve as bridges between our species when the time comes for formal relations. March 3, 1948, teacher's final visit. The ship appeared one last time over the eastern field, and teacher emerged to say goodbye. Through our mental connection, I received a vast download of information about the Kalendi, their technology, and their observations of human development. Most of this knowledge is beyond my current ability to comprehend, but teacher assured me that the understanding would come as I mature. I was also given instructions on how to recognize the signs that formal contact is approaching. Teacher said that the individual chosen to make first contact might not be from my direct lineage, but they would carry genetic markers that I would recognize. March 5, 1948, the ship is gone. I feel a profound emptiness, as if a part of my soul has been removed. But I also feel a tremendous responsibility. I am now a keeper of humanity's greatest secret, and I must decide how to preserve this knowledge for the day when it will be needed. Sarah closed the journal and sat in the growing darkness of evening. The implications of what she had just read were staggering. If her grandmother's account was accurate, humanity had been under observation by an advanced alien civilization for centuries. More importantly, formal contact was apparently approaching, and her family might have a role to play in that contact. She turned her attention to the final item in the folder, a sealed envelope with her name written on the outside in her grandmother's handwriting. Inside was a letter dated just 2 weeks before Grandma May's death. My dearest Sarah, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and you have discovered the truth about my stories. I have watched you grow into a brilliant and compassionate woman, and I believe you are the one teacher spoke of, the descendant who would carry our family's knowledge into the future. The device teacher gave me is hidden in the base of my statue of Guanine in the living room. The statue has a false bottom that opens with a quarter turn to the left. Take the device and keep it safe. You will know when the time comes to use it. I have spent 75 years carrying this secret, and it has been both a blessing and a burden. There were times when I doubted my own memories, when I wondered if I had imagined everything. But the device remains warm, and sometimes, late at night, I can still sense teacher's presence across the vast distances of space. You are a scientist, Sarah. You understand evidence and proof in ways that I never could. Study the photographs, verify the journal entries, research the historical records. You will find that my account is consistent with other unexplained phenomena from that period. But, more importantly, prepare yourself for what is coming. The signs that teacher described are beginning to manifest. Climate change, nuclear proliferation, the development of artificial intelligence, the first tentative steps toward interstellar exploration, these are the indicators that humanity is approaching the threshold. The Kalendi are still watching. Still waiting. Still hoping that we will prove ourselves worthy of joining the galactic community. When formal contact comes, you may be called upon to serve as a bridge between our species. Do not fear this responsibility. Embrace it. Help our people understand that we are not alone, and that our choices in the coming decades will determine whether humanity takes its place among the stars or remains forever isolated on this small, blue world. I love you, granddaughter. Make me proud. Forever yours, Grandma May. Sarah sat in the darkness for a long time, holding the letter and trying to process everything she had learned. Finally, she walked to the living room and examined the statue of Guanine, the Buddhist goddess of mercy. The statue had sat on her grandmother's mantelpiece for as long as Sarah could remember, and she had always assumed it was simply a religious artifact. She grasped the base and turned it to the left. To her amazement, it rotated smoothly, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a device unlike anything she had ever seen, a smooth, egg-shaped object that seemed to be made of some kind of metallic crystal. As soon as her fingers touched it, the device began to glow with a soft, warm light, and Sarah felt a strange tingling sensation in her mind. For just a moment, she sensed something vast and intelligent reaching out to her across the darkness of space. A presence that had been waiting patiently for 75 years for this moment of contact. And, in that instant, Sarah understood that her life had just changed forever. The device pulsed once more and, then, fell silent, but the warmth remained. Sarah carefully wrapped it in a silk scarf and placed it in her purse. Tomorrow, she would begin the work of verifying her grandmother's story. But tonight, she simply sat with the knowledge that humanity was not alone in the universe, and that she had just inherited the greatest responsibility in human history. Part 2, the verification. Dr. Sarah Chen had not slept properly in 3 weeks. Her apartment was littered with printouts, historical documents, and astronomical charts as she worked obsessively to verify her grandmother's account. What she discovered during those sleepless nights would either validate the most extraordinary story in human history or confirm that her beloved grandmother had been the victim of elaborate delusions. Sarah began her investigation with the photographs. Using modern digital enhancement techniques, she was able to extract details from the grainy 1947 images that would have been impossible to detect with the naked eye. The object in the photographs displayed several characteristics that seemed to rule out conventional explanations. The craft showed no visible means of propulsion, no exhaust plumes, no rotating parts, no control surfaces that would be necessary for atmospheric flight. More intriguingly, the enhancement revealed geometric patterns on the underside of the object that appeared to be deliberately designed rather than the result of random industrial construction. Sarah consulted with Dr. Marcus Webb, a colleague in Stanford's physics department who specialized in aerodynamics. Without revealing the source of the photographs, she asked him to analyze the images for signs of forgery or conventional aircraft. "These are interesting," Webb said, studying the enhanced images on his computer screen. "The proportions are all wrong for any aircraft from the 1940s. Hell, they're wrong for any aircraft from today. Look at this wing loading calculation, this thing should fall out of the sky like a brick." And these geometric patterns on the underside, they almost look like some kind of sensor array. But the technology to build something like this wouldn't exist for decades after these photos were supposedly taken. Could the photographs have been faked? Sarah asked. Webb shook his head. Not with 1940s technology. The lighting is consistent throughout the series, the shadows are correct for the time of day indicated by the metadata, and the grain structure is authentic for film stock from that period. If this is a fake, it was created using techniques that didn't exist when the photos were taken. Sarah's next step was to research historical records from Taiwan during the 1940s. She spent days in the Stanford Library archives and eventually gained access to classified documents from the Taiwanese colonial government through her academic credentials. What she found was remarkable. Buried in routine administrative files from 1947, she discovered 17 separate reports of unusual aerial phenomena filed by residents of rural farming communities across northern Taiwan. The reports described objects that matched her grandmother's account almost perfectly: silent, disc-shaped craft that appeared at night and seemed to take particular interest in agricultural areas. More significantly, Sarah found a memorandum from a Japanese meteorologist stationed in Taipei who had documented atmospheric anomalies during the same time period. The meteorologist, Dr. Hiroshi Yamamoto, had noted unusual electromagnetic readings that coincided with civilian reports of aerial phenomena. His data suggested that whatever was causing the sightings was generating energy signatures unlike anything in the known scientific literature. Sarah also discovered that her great-grandfather's farm had been included in an agricultural survey conducted by the Taiwanese government in early 1948. The survey noted that the farm's rice yields had increased by 37% compared to previous years, despite the absence of new farming techniques or fertilizers. The survey team had been unable to explain the improvement and had recommended further study that was apparently never conducted. The historical verification was compelling, but Sarah knew she needed more concrete evidence. She decided to return to her grandmother's farm, which was now owned by distant relatives who had converted it into a small tourist attraction celebrating traditional Taiwanese agriculture. The farm looked much the same as it had in her grandmother's photographs. The main fields were still planted with rice, and the old farmhouse had been lovingly preserved as a museum of rural life in the 1940s. Sarah spent an afternoon wandering the property, trying to imagine what her teenage grandmother must have felt when she first saw the alien ship. As evening approached, Sarah made her way to the eastern field where, according to the journal, the ship had actually landed. She carried a small electromagnetic field detector that she had borrowed from the physics department, hoping to find residual traces of whatever energy source had powered the Kalendi vessel. The results were immediately apparent. The detector began registering anomalous readings as soon as Sarah entered the eastern field. The electromagnetic signatures were subtle but consistent, forming a circular pattern approximately 30 meters in diameter. Within this circle, the readings were unlike anything in the standard reference materials. It was as if the very atoms of soil and vegetation had been subtly altered by exposure to some unknown form of energy. Sarah collected soil samples from both inside and outside the anomalous area and arranged to have them analyzed by a geologist friend at UC Berkeley. The results, when they came back 2 weeks later, were extraordinary. The soil within the circle showed traces of isotopes that did not occur naturally on Earth. Moreover, the molecular structure of the clay particles had been modified in a way that enhanced nutrient retention and water absorption, explaining the dramatic improvement in crop yields that the 1948 Agricultural Survey had documented. But the most compelling evidence came from an unexpected source. While researching historical records, Sarah had discovered that Dr. Hiroshi Yamamoto, the meteorologist who had documented the electromagnetic anomalies in 1947, was still alive and living in Kyoto, Japan. At 96 years old, he was one of the few surviving witnesses to the events her grandmother had described. Sarah arranged to visit Dr. Yamamoto through a contact in Stanford's East Asian Studies department. The elderly scientist received her in his modest apartment overlooking a traditional Japanese garden. Despite his advanced age, his mind was sharp, and his memory of the 1947 incidents was remarkably clear. "I was 32 years old then," Dr. Yamamoto told Sarah in careful English. Fresh out of Tokyo University, stationed in Taiwan to monitor weather patterns for the colonial administration. I thought I was going to study typhoons and monsoons. Instead, I found myself documenting the impossible. Dr. Yamamoto produced a leather-bound notebook filled with meticulous observations and calculations. I recorded electromagnetic anomalies on 23 separate nights between September 1947 and March 1948. The readings were consistent with the presence of an unknown energy source operating at frequencies I had never encountered. The phenomena always occurred in agricultural areas and always lasted between 30 minutes and 2 hours. Did you ever see the source of these anomalies? Sarah asked. The old man nodded slowly. Once. On the night of October 15, 1947. I was conducting a field survey near a rice farm when I saw it, a large, disc-shaped object hovering silently above the fields. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. I knew immediately that it was not of human origin. Sarah's heart raced. October 15th was the date her grandmother had recorded making first direct contact with the entity she called teacher. I reported my observations to my superiors, Dr. Yamamoto continued. They ordered me to classify the data and never speak of it publicly. The official explanation was that I had observed weather balloons or experimental aircraft. But I knew what I had seen, and my instruments did not lie. Dr. Yamamoto opened a wooden box on his desk and removed a small device that made Sarah gasp. It was nearly identical to the one her grandmother had left her, the same egg-shaped form, the same metallic crystal construction. The object dropped this as it departed, Dr. Yamamoto explained. I have kept it secret for 75 years. Sometimes it glows, as if responding to some distant signal. I always wondered if there were others who had been given similar devices. Sarah carefully removed her grandmother's device from her purse. As soon as the two objects came within proximity of each other, they both began to glow with increasing intensity. The warm tingling sensation in Sarah's mind returned, stronger than before, and, for a moment she felt connected not just to the distant Kalendi presence but to Dr. Yamamoto as well. Remarkable, the old scientist whispered. I believe our devices are communicating with each other. And, perhaps, with them. The two devices pulsed in perfect synchronization for nearly a minute before gradually returning to their dormant state. Dr. Yamamoto looked at Sarah with new understanding. You are connected to this, aren't you? He asked. Your family was chosen for contact, just as I was chosen to document it. Sarah nodded and shared her grandmother's story. Dr. Yamamoto listened intently, occasionally consulting his notebook to verify details. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. Your grandmother was a remarkable woman, he finally said. I always wondered if the beings had made direct contact with anyone. I was apparently selected to serve as a scientific witness, while she was chosen for deeper communication. Together, our accounts provide corroborating evidence that these events actually occurred. But why? Sarah asked. Why make contact with just a few individuals? Why maintain secrecy for so long? Dr. Yamamoto smiled sadly. Think about what humanity was like in 1947. We had just emerged from the most destructive war in our history. Nuclear weapons had been used for the first time. The world was divided into hostile camps, each armed with increasingly powerful technology. If beings from another world had revealed themselves openly, how do you think our governments would have responded? Sarah understood. Humanity in the post-war era had been barely capable of managing its own affairs, let alone processing the implications of contact with an advanced alien civilization. But, according to my grandmother's journal, formal contact is approaching, Sarah said. The Kalendi have been waiting for humanity to mature. Do you think we're ready? Dr. Yamamoto gestured toward his window, where the lights of Kyoto stretched out toward the horizon. We have made remarkable progress in some areas. We have international institutions, global communications, shared scientific endeavors. But we still struggle with tribalism, environmental destruction, and the potential for technological catastrophe. Whether we are ready, that is perhaps not for us to judge. As Sarah prepared to leave, Dr. Yamamoto handed her a sealed envelope. I have been working on a complete record of my observations for 75 years, waiting for the right person to share them with. I believe you are that person. Use this information wisely. Sarah returned to California with a profound sense of purpose. The evidence was overwhelming. Her grandmother's account was not only accurate but represented just one part of a much larger story. The Kalendi had been monitoring humanity for centuries, making selective contact with individuals who could serve as bridges when the time came for formal relations. But the most significant revelation came when Sarah began analyzing the data from both devices more carefully. Using specialized equipment in Stanford's physics lab, she discovered that the objects were not just communication devices but sophisticated sensors that had been continuously monitoring human development for decades. The devices contained terabytes of information about technological progress, environmental changes, political developments, and social evolution. It was as if the Kalendi had been maintaining detailed files on human civilization, updating their assessments in real time through these scattered monitoring stations. More importantly, the data suggested that the waiting period was nearly over. Multiple indicators suggested that humanity was approaching the threshold criteria established by the Kalendi for formal contact. Climate change was forcing unprecedented global cooperation. Space technology was advancing rapidly. Artificial intelligence was beginning to emerge. Most significantly, the Global Information Network was creating the first truly planetary human consciousness. Sarah realized that she was not just a keeper of historical secrets but an active participant in humanity's most important transition. The devices her grandmother and Dr. Yamamoto had preserved were not relics of the past but tools for the future. And, based on the increasing frequency of their activations, that future was approaching rapidly. The question was no longer whether contact would occur, but when and whether humanity would prove itself worthy of joining the galactic community. Sarah understood that her role as a bridge between species was about to begin in earnest. Part 3, The Return. 6 months after discovering her grandmother's secret, Dr. Sarah Chen found herself standing in the same eastern field where first contact had occurred 75 years earlier. The device teacher had given to her grandmother now pulsed with steady, urgent energy, and Sarah knew with absolute certainty that the long waiting period was finally coming to an end. The signs had been building for weeks. Dr. Yamamoto had contacted her from Japan to report that his device had become increasingly active, displaying patterns of light and generating electromagnetic readings that defied conventional explanation. More significantly, Sarah had begun receiving reports from colleagues around the world of similar devices being discovered by families who had harbored unexplained artifacts for generations. A professor of archaeology at Oxford University had found a Kalendi device hidden in her late grandfather's collection of meteorite samples from Kenya. A marine biologist in Australia had inherited one from his Aboriginal grandmother, who had claimed it was a gift from star people during the Dreamtime. A computer programmer in Brazil had discovered one among her Incan artifacts, passed down through her family for over 500 years. Each discovery followed the same pattern. The devices had been left with individuals who possessed specific genetic markers that made them receptive to Kalendi communication. Each family had preserved stories of otherworldly contact, usually disguised as folklore or religious experiences. And each device had remained dormant until the past 6 months, when they had all begun displaying the same urgent activation patterns. Sarah had spent those months traveling the world, quietly making contact with the other device holders and piecing together a comprehensive picture of the Kalendi's long observation of humanity. What emerged was a remarkable story of patience, hope, and careful guidance spanning centuries of human development. The Kalendi had first arrived in Earth's solar system during the height of the Roman Empire, drawn by radio emissions that indicated the presence of an intelligent species. They had observed human civilization through its various phases: the rise and fall of empires, the development of science and technology, the gradual emergence of global consciousness. Throughout this period, they had made selective contact with individuals who could serve as bridges when formal relations became possible. Some of these contacts had become the basis for religious traditions and mythological systems. The angels reported in various scriptures, the sky gods of ancient mythologies, the star people of indigenous traditions. Many of these accounts were actually records of Kalendi contact, preserved in the only language available to pre-scientific societies. But, the Kalendi had learned from their experiences with other developing species that premature contact could be catastrophic. They had witnessed civilizations destroy themselves when confronted with evidence of more advanced beings before they were psychologically and socially prepared for such knowledge. The key was to wait until a species achieved certain developmental milestones that indicated readiness for galactic citizenship. For humanity, those milestones were finally being achieved. The development of nuclear weapons had demonstrated that humans possessed the power to destroy themselves, a critical test of species maturity. The emergence of global communication networks showed that humanity was developing planetary consciousness. The first steps toward space exploration indicated that humans were ready to think beyond their home world. Most importantly, the growing awareness of environmental interdependence suggested that humanity was beginning to understand its responsibility as a planetary steward. According to the data stored in the Kalendi devices, humanity had achieved the minimum threshold for contact 6 months ago when the global response to a major climate crisis had demonstrated unprecedented international cooperation. The activation of the devices was apparently an automatic signal that formal contact protocols should begin. Sarah had worked with Dr. Yamamoto and the other device holders to prepare for what they all sensed was coming. They had established secure communication networks, prepared preliminary contact protocols, and identified key government and scientific leaders who might be receptive to the truth about humanity's cosmic situation. But none of their preparation had adequately prepared Sarah for the moment when she felt the familiar presence of Teacher reaching across the vastness of space to touch her mind. Sarah, the voice spoke directly into her consciousness, as clear and warm as it had been in her grandmother's memories. "It is time." Sarah looked up to see a familiar sight, a large, disc-shaped craft descending silently through the evening sky toward the eastern field. The ship was exactly as her grandmother had described it, but somehow more beautiful and imposing than the old photographs had captured. As it settled gently onto the rice paddy, Sarah felt a mixture of terror and wonder that she imagined must be similar to what her grandmother had experienced 7 decades earlier. A doorway opened in the ship's seamless hull, and a figure emerged. Teacher was tall and graceful, with features that were unmistakably intelligent but alien, large, dark eyes that seemed to hold depths of knowledge and experience, elongated limbs that moved with fluid precision, and skin that had a subtle, opalescent quality that shifted with the light. But, despite Teacher's alien appearance, Sarah felt no fear. The mental connection established by the device created an immediate sense of familiarity and trust. She understood intuitively that Teacher meant no harm and was, in fact, genuinely pleased to see her. "You have your grandmother's courage," Teacher communicated, approaching Sarah with unhurried steps. "And her wisdom. We have been watching your work to verify and preserve her accounts. You have done well." "She never stopped believing," Sarah replied, speaking aloud though she knew Teacher could understand her thoughts. "Even when everyone else thought her stories were fantasies." "Belief was not required," Teacher responded with what Sarah sensed was gentle amusement. "Knowledge was sufficient. Your grandmother understood that truth does not depend on external validation." Teacher gestured toward the ship, and Sarah felt an invitation to come aboard. As they walked together toward the craft, Teacher began to explain what was about to happen. "Formal contact between our species begins tonight. Representatives from 12 Kalendi observational vessels will simultaneously make contact with human governments around your world. The individuals you have gathered, the device holders and their families, will serve as interpreters and cultural bridges during the initial negotiations." "Are we ready?" Sarah asked. "Humanity, I mean. Are we really ready for this?" Teacher paused at the ship's entrance and turned to face her directly. For a moment, Sarah felt the full weight of an intelligence that was ancient and vast beyond her comprehension, but also infinitely patient and compassionate. "Readiness is not a binary state," Teacher explained. "No species is ever completely prepared for contact with galactic civilization. But humanity has achieved the minimum requirements. You understand that you are not alone in the universe. You have developed technology capable of threatening your own existence. You have begun to think in planetary rather than tribal terms, and you have demonstrated the capacity for both great destruction and great cooperation. They entered the ship, and Sarah was immediately struck by the impossible vastness of the interior space. The craft seemed to be larger inside than outside, with corridors and chambers that stretched beyond what the external dimensions should have allowed. Teacher noticed her confusion. Spatial engineering, teacher explained. We manipulate the geometry of spacetime to create functional interiors that exceed apparent external constraints. This technology will be among the first that we share with humanity, once your mathematicians and physicists are ready to understand the principles involved. Teacher led Sarah to a central chamber that was clearly designed for communication and diplomacy. The walls were covered with displays showing star charts, technical diagrams, and what appeared to be real-time images of Earth from space. Other Kalendi were present, each working with complex holographic interfaces that seemed to respond to thought as much as physical manipulation. This is the coordination center for our contact mission, teacher explained. From here, we are managing simultaneous first contact events with representatives of your major governmental, scientific, and cultural institutions. The process is designed to minimize shock and maximize understanding. Sarah watched in amazement as the displays showed contact events occurring around the globe. In Geneva, a Kalendi representative was meeting with officials from the United Nations. In Washington, another was briefing senior leaders from NASA and the State Department. Similar scenes were playing out in Beijing, Moscow, London, New Delhi, and 6 other major capitals. The initial revelations will be limited to basic facts, teacher continued. The existence of galactic civilization, the nature of our observational mission, and our interest in establishing formal relations with humanity. More complex information will be shared gradually, as your species demonstrates its ability to integrate new knowledge without social disruption. What about the others? Sarah asked. The other device holders? Each is playing a similar role to yours, teacher responded. Dr. Yamamoto is serving as a scientific liaison in Tokyo. Ms. Okafor is working with African Union representatives in Addis Ababa. Dr. Silva is briefing Latin American leaders in Brasilia. Together, you form a network of cultural interpreters who can help both species understand each other's perspectives and concerns. Teacher gestured to one of the displays, which showed a detailed analysis of human social and technological development. The data was staggeringly comprehensive, covering everything from population dynamics and resource consumption to artistic achievement and philosophical evolution. We have learned much about humanity during our centuries of observation, teacher said. Your species is remarkable in many ways. You display extraordinary creativity and adaptability. You are capable of both fierce competition and profound cooperation. Your emotional range and capacity for empathy are unusual among developing species. These qualities give us hope that humanity will make valuable contributions to galactic civilization. But there are concerns as well, Sarah observed, noting data about environmental degradation, nuclear weapons, and social inequality. Indeed, teacher acknowledged. Humanity is approaching several critical thresholds. Your technological development is accelerating rapidly, but your social and ethical evolution has not kept pace. You have the power to destroy your biosphere, but you have not yet fully accepted responsibility for planetary stewardship. You have developed global communication networks, but you still struggle with tribal thinking and resource competition. Teacher paused, and Sarah sensed a depth of concern behind the alien being's composed exterior. This is why formal contact is occurring now, rather than waiting for humanity to fully mature on its own. Our analysis suggests that your species is approaching a crucial decision point. Over the next 50 years, humanity will either achieve sustainable civilization and take its place among the galactic community, or it will collapse under the weight of its own technological power. We hope that knowledge of the broader universe will provide the perspective and motivation necessary to choose the path of wisdom. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent pulse from Sarah's grandmother's device. Teacher immediately directed attention to one of the communication displays, which showed a priority transmission from the Kalendi vessel operating near Earth's moon. Unexpected development, the transmission reported. Human space-based assets have detected our vessels. Multiple government agencies are demanding immediate explanations.
Recommend accelerating disclosure timeline.
Teacher quickly conferred with other Kalendi in the chamber, their communication occurring through rapid exchanges of mental imagery that were too complex for Sarah to follow. After a few moments, teacher returned attention to her. Your species' observational capabilities have advanced more rapidly than we anticipated, teacher explained. Several of your space telescopes and satellite tracking systems have detected our vessels despite our concealment technology. We must now choose between withdrawing and maintaining secrecy, or proceeding with full disclosure ahead of schedule.
What are the risks of full disclosure? Sarah asked.
Significant, teacher replied honestly.
Premature revelation of galactic civilization could trigger social instability, religious crises, economic disruption, and political chaos. Some segments of your population might respond with fear and hostility. Others might become dependent on Kalendi technology rather than developing their own capabilities. There is also the risk that knowledge of advanced civilizations might discourage human innovation and exploration. And the risks of withdrawal? Also significant.
If we withdraw now, humanity will know that we exist but will have no framework for understanding our intentions or capabilities. Fear of the unknown often produces worse outcomes than knowledge of difficult truths. Moreover, our analysis suggests that humanity is approaching several crisis points where our guidance might be crucial for species survival. Teacher looked directly at Sarah, and she realized that a momentous decision was being made.
The choice ultimately belongs to humanity. As our designated cultural liaison, your recommendation will carry significant weight in our final determination. Should we proceed with immediate full disclosure, withdraw and wait for future contact, or maintain the gradual revelation schedule despite the complications?
Sarah felt the enormous weight of the decision.
The choice she made in the next few minutes could determine the trajectory of human civilization for generations to come.
She thought about her grandmother, who had carried the secret of contact for 75 years, waiting for the moment when humanity would be ready to join the galactic community.
Full disclosure, Sarah said finally.
Humanity has always grown strongest when facing its challenges directly rather than hiding from difficult truths. We're not perfect, and we're not fully mature, but we're ready to begin learning.
The question isn't whether we can handle the truth about the universe, it's whether we can afford to remain ignorant any longer. Teacher inclined its head in what Sarah recognized as a gesture of respect.
Your grandmother would be proud, teacher said. Her assessment of human courage and resilience appears to have been accurate.
Teacher turned to the communication console and transmitted Sarah's recommendation to the other Kalendi vessels around Earth. Within minutes, responses came back from the other cultural liaisons. Each had made the same choice. Then, it begins, teacher announced. As if responding to some prearranged signal, displays throughout the chamber began showing news feeds from around the world.
Every major television network, internet platform, and social media system on Earth simultaneously received the same message: citizens of Earth.
We are the Kalendi.
We come in peace, and we have been waiting a long time to meet you.
Sarah watched in awe as the revelation of contact spread across human civilization in real time.
The initial reactions were exactly what teacher had predicted: shock, disbelief, fear, wonder, and excitement. But, beneath the chaos, Sarah could see something else emerging, a sense that humanity was finally taking its place in a much larger story. The easy part is over, teacher observed with what Sarah was learning to recognize as Kalendi humor.
Now comes the challenging work of building understanding between our species.
As Sarah looked out at the Earth from the Kalendi ship, she thought about her grandmother's faith that humanity would one day be ready for this moment. Grandma May had been right, the ship from her stories wasn't imaginary. She had seen it, communicated with it, and preserved the knowledge of that contact until the time came to share it with the world. And now that time had finally arrived. The man who destroys his weak self can never be destroyed by others. Sarah realized that this ancient wisdom, which her grandmother had often quoted, applied not just to individuals but to entire species. Humanity's journey to galactic citizenship would require destroying the weak aspects of human nature, the tribalism, the short-term thinking, the fear of the unknown. But those who could make that transformation would emerge stronger than they could ever imagine. As teacher began outlining the next steps in the contact process, Sarah felt a profound sense of continuity stretching from her grandmother's teenage encounter with an alien visitor to this moment of species-wide transformation. The secret that had been carefully preserved for 3 generations was now humanity's shared inheritance. The waiting was over. The real work was just beginning.